My AV guy's working his way up.
I
So,
think it might be in their book. I don't know if it's
and
in their book.
yes, we'll have it on the overhead. But if you want to turn to page 6 in your book, it's there as well. And we call this the marriage wheel. And basically, this is going to be an overview of what we're going to cover in the course. The first thing we're going to work on is building strong foundations. That's what we're working on tonight. The second thing will be the art of communicating well, resolving conflict effectively, practicing forgiveness, which is a big one. That's definitely one that's a session you don't want to miss on that, as well as resolving the conflict. Recognizing what we bring into the marriage from our family background, which may have a detrimental effect on a relationship. So the kind of baggage you bring in. How to keep sex alive throughout the course of marriage. This is actually one of Teresa and I's favorite topics, but it's not only because we're married, but it's because it's the one session that we've taught in Relationship Builders for years. And we're the Dr. Ruth and Dr. Phil of Canyon View Vineyard Church.
The real truth is nobody wanted to teach it at Relationship Builders.
So we got stuck with it is what happened.
Okay, fine, we'll teach it. And, it's just something that we've also become passionate about because we know the difference it makes in people's married lives. And we live in a culture saturated with sex everywhere with everything we do. So
we give a real biblical perspective on that. So those are the 7 things that we'll be going over in the course. Now you'll see there's 2 other parts to the wheel as well. The rim or the tire, that's going to hold, and the word commitment, and that's the commitment it's going to take. It's one of the things that when we are mentoring a couple, the first question we ask is divorce a possibility? And if divorce is a possibility, then we got to change some attitudes there. But knowing that the commitment's there and that divorce isn't a possibility, that's huge. And then the center of the whole equation is God. And we know that it's going to take God in the middle of everything that we do in order to keep things together. In Psalm 85:10, a good marriage is where love and faithfulness meet together. Love and trust belong to God's people. Goodness and peace will be theirs. So we know that that's a very huge part. So know that that's one of the things that we're going to spend a lot of time with, is talking about really where God fits into the whole equation.
Well, and I think a thing that you guys need to understand is that God has a purpose for your marriage. He's omnipotent. He knows everything. He knew you were going to get married, and He has a plan for your marriage. And when we approach marriage that way, and we want to do it God's way, it's amazing what happens and how our lives are transformed. And we learn that being married is not about me. It's about serving the person that we're married to, laying our lives down. And that's why God so much refers to marriage being like our relationship with Him. It's all about sacrifice. It's all about laying our life down. And one of the first things we do when we mentor a couple is we say to them, how's your relationship with Jesus? Do you have one? Do you know who He is? All those questions. And most of the time it's yeah. What we find as we come into the mentoring process in about 6 weeks is where they hit the wall. And what they find is they've really had to do a gut check about where their life is with Christ. Because, a lot of times we get into marriage and we look at our spouse and we're like, man, I don't like this about you. Man, I wish this would change. Man, I wish I could change this about you. And what you find is that we have to lay our lives on the altar and give it to Christ and say, you know what, God? I want you to change me. And in the process of changing me, I'm going to pray that you will love my husband, you will nurture him, you will take care of him, so that I can love him like you want me to love him. And when we watch couples turn that corner, when they learn to absorb themselves in God's word and they make it a part of their everyday living life, that's when we watch them turn the corner in their marriage and go, they got it. God's right there. He's working them through all these things because we can't do it on our own. No matter how much self-motivation you have, you cannot do it on your own.
And that's one of the reasons the marriage course is structured the way it is. That's why you're sitting at a table with just your spouse. It's going to give you guys time to spend with each other. I mean, this may be the only time during the week. I hate to say that, but it may be the only time during the week that some of you are doing that. So that's important to us. It's going to give you some chance to enjoy one another, spend evenings, at least one evening a week together. And we'll force you to spend a little bit more time together because there is some homework that we have for you when you leave. So, and the other thing is, over the 8-week time frame, it actually allows you to kind of establish a habit, and that the habit of spending some time with your spouse. So that's one of the things that we hope that you carry on and continue doing.
And if you'll notice on your table, there's this thing of stickers, and it says date night. And what we challenge you to do is that we've planned your next 8 weeks for you on Friday nights. When you leave here after that 8 weeks, we want those stickers on the calendar for the next year. Because we will tell you, if you don't make it a priority once a week to spend time together, Les and I almost always, we can say that. We would make a time for each other during the week, even when our kids were little, all the way through their teenage years, and we tried at least once a month to do an overnighter, even if it was in a local hotel here in town, to go away. We always went away on our anniversary and always went away on my birthday. Kids just knew it. It was ingrained in them. And that's what showed them the priority of what our marriage was and what we wanted it to be, because, you know, what we show our kids is what they're going to model. And so, and I'll tell you right now, it's going to be really easy when we have you coming here. When life comes back to being all the challenges of busyness and what it is, it'll go out the door just like that. Because the couple that we're mentoring right now who went through this course last time, the minute this class ended, their intentions were good. They never went on a date after that. Life was too busy. Kids, landscaping, work, blah, blah, blah. Guys, you have to make it a priority. You got to do it, because it's not going to happen. The enemy will make sure it doesn't happen. So right now we're going to have you do your exercise in your book.
First exercise is on page 7. So if you want to take it out, there's actually 20 questions, and each one of you, yeah, there you go, 20 questions. So each one of you will answer the question. So on question 1, you'll note that there's a little box under the B category. And in that box, you're going to put a 0 through 4. 0 means never true, 1 is rarely true, 2 occasionally is true, 3 is usually true, 4 is always true. So my partner regularly gives me his or her undivided attention. So you're going to rate often your spouse, and you may be rating yourself. But you'll see that for question 1, it's under column B. Question 2, it's under column D. When you're done, you then go down to the bottom and you add up the scores in each one of the columns, okay? So we're going to give you about 30 minutes. You can work on this. You can get some dessert. You can get some water, some more tea. You can go to the restroom. And then at the back, once both of you are done, you can put your scores and then get your spouse's score as well. And you can see how you stack up in 4 categories of building our friendship, building our communication, building our physical relationship, and building our future together. Now, I know this can be a very hard exercise. In fact, we have a couple who said that they didn't realize how much they didn't know each other until they had taken this assessment. So anyway, have some fun with it, but I know that it can be difficult. If you're stuck, yell at one of us, and we're more than happy to help you out.
Yep.
Or anything along those lines. And if you have any questions while you're doing these as well, just give us a shout. So, okay, and could be a little difficult in some areas, I'm sure, on that. Okay.
Well, I think the really important thing is, I know it'll tell you, it says now look at each other's scores, discuss them, especially any differences. One of the things that is really hard for us as married couples is we'll look at it and say, yeah, you know, there's a big, huge difference there. Yeah, this is where we differ. Okay, what's the action plan?
Right.
What are you going to do about it? What are you going to sit down and make up as an action plan to deal with it? And that's so important. I think one of my best lines is that, you know, there's a difference between intent and being intentional. And the difference is like night and day. We can have great intent and say all the things we want to do, but unless we're intentional about it, It's not going to make any difference. Nothing will change. So now we're going to spend some time for the rest of the evening talking about two different foundations that build a strong marriage. I'm going to talk about the first one. Les will talk about the second one. And the first one is just making time for each other, learning to spend time together. The more you spend time together, the more you get to know each other. And it's very interesting to watch the dynamic between couples that we can get so busy in our lives that when we try to come back and reconnect, we almost feel like strangers. It's like we want to just do surface talk. I mean, and one of the things that we really encourage you on your date night is, it's about you. It's not about work. It's not about, all those other things. It's about you guys working together on the things that you need to work together on. So making time for the people that matter in our lives doesn't just happen. It requires a conscious decision. And if we think that a slower day will come, you guys are disillusioned because it will not happen. And so that's why we encourage you to make sure that on your planner, you plan your date night. You just make it happen no matter what. It's sacred.
And if you don't use a planner, you can still put those on your calendar at home. So somewhere, someplace, I know you track dates. So
some friends married for 8 years moved out of London. They had 2 small children. He commuted. He had lots of pressures at work, and he got home very late. She started having supper with the children. He ate in front of the TV and fell asleep. They spoke to us about their feelings of losing touch with each other. They didn't want it to be like that, but somehow that just happened. Starved of time together, their intimacy and closeness in their relationship started to disappear. It was slipping through their fingers. And that's one of the first things that you'll see that will go the less time you spend together. We are utterly convinced, because it's been proven in our own marriage, that the regular planning of time alone together as a couple is essential if you want your relationship to grow. Les talked about it at first. Marriage is work. We work at everything else we do in life. Everything. The last thing we want to expend our energy is on our marriage, and we've got that flip-flop the wrong way. The very first thing we should be expending our energy on is God and then our marriage. And when we do that, guys, the world falls into place so much better. Our priorities are right. God honors it. He blesses us for that. And it's amazing. And you'll hear some of those stories when you listen to people talk here through the course. Depriving a marriage of time spent together is the equivalent of depriving a plant of water. Some may survive longer than others, but eventually they all wither and die. And we watched it happen. We can easily stop feeling so passionate about this time together when we get married because we have distractions, work, children. Then you lose connection. And once you lose connection, it's harder to get it back than if you expend the energy first to make sure you stay connected. Big difference. Special time together as a couple. Spend time together as a couple doing several things. Keep romance alive. Maintain your appreciation and understanding of one another. We can become so consumed and busy in life that we actually appreciate the people we work with and our friends more, and we tell them that than we do the person that we're married to. We must communicate regularly at a meaningful level. So again, we talked about that. It's not about just work or kids, or it's got to have some substance to it. Whatever the circumstances, the regularity of it will weave the fabric of your relationship over the lifetime of your marriage. Marriage time should have all the connotations of a date. Even though you might stay at home or go out, it should be like a date. At home, it could be a special supper with special food, candles on the table, and your favorite music. This was one of the fun things that Les and I did when we had little kids. It's hard to go out. It can be expensive. Hard to find a sitter. So sometimes I would wait till the kids were in bed, and I would have everything planned for dinner. I'd have steak and shrimp. I'd have our champagne glasses on the table. I'd have candles on the table. We just did it. It was something that was very important to us. If you go out, you could go to dinner, go to the movie, whatever is fun for you. And one of the things I would encourage you to do as you begin to build this into your life is from my standpoint is I love to journal because it tells me about what I'm doing right and what I can see making a difference when I choose to take the steps to be intentional about living life with my husband, dating him, and all those different things. And so I would encourage you, if this is a struggle, that you journal and watch the difference it makes in your life and in your marriage. Take time to talk about what's going on in your life, your hopes, your fears, your worries, things you're looking forward to. Plan for your future. You know, one of the things that at the retreat we're going to have a couple of these books is it's an actual journal, a weekend getaway journal. And it takes you to a weekend away where you plan for your marriage. You actually come up with a vision statement for your marriage. What are we going to be when we grow up? What do we want to do? What do we see as the big picture? You know, what are our hopes? What are our fears? Do you ever talk about those? So important. I mean, to lay there in bed at night and think that you can't talk to the person that you live with every day of your life and go to bed with and tell him the heaviness of your heart and what hopes and dreams you have for your kids and for each other. We've got to get down to that level.
And this is really one that for us, for Teresa and I, this is where we're at that stage. You know, okay, what's next for us? What are we planning for? You know, when do we retire? You know, all of those things. What are we going to do with the rest of our lives? So.
And if you don't plan it, life's going to plan it for you. It's just the way it works, you know. And, you know, one of the things that, some of the issues that people deal with in life when people have health issues and sickness issues, and, you know, for Les and I, and you'll hear some of our story, I have struggled hugely with depression. Huge issue in our relationship. And if we weren't purposeful and intentful about planning, and if I didn't feel safe to share where I was at and what I was going through and the pain and the hurt in my life, we'd have never lasted. We would not be standing up here today. Because we've got to get to that point in our life where we're safe when those things in life come our way, because we don't know what's around the next corner. We just don't know. Whatever we do, if we stay at home, it needs to be different than the rest of our time together. Can't look the same. It's not just another night where you sit and watch TV. And you know what? I hate TV. I grew up without it. Now, when I grew up without it, I thought my life was over. You know, I had to go to my friend's house to watch TV because that was one of the don'ts in my life. We didn't dance, we didn't go to the movies, we didn't do TV. I mean, da-da-da-da-da. But you know what? I go back and look at that and think, man, that was the best thing in my whole life as a kid. Because we got to share time together as a family. We got to do things together. And man, you just plop yourself in front of the TV and you watch, and you know what? Before long, 2-3 hours has gone by that night. You haven't had a conversation about anything. Probably what you watched has not really been that beneficial to you. So if you're going to stay at home, have a plan. Both of us need to initiate and plan these times. It doesn't work if it's only being driven by one of you. It's the responsibility of both of us to ensure that we're having marriage time. There will be times when we feel like, why bother? We're too tired, it's too much effort. The last time it might not have worked very well. We'd encourage you to persevere for the sake of the long term. Remember, it's about the long road, not about what's just right here, even though sometimes that may be really tough where we're at. Effort and creativity are needed. You know, think about fun things. One of the things when Les and I were married 5 years, I planned a celebration for our 5th anniversary. He had no idea. And I had gone and rented a tux. I had rented a limo. I had gone and bought me a fancy dress, got my hair done. And I came home, and I had already put the tux away where he didn't know where it was. And I had come home, and I was totally all dressed up. And he just looks at me. I'll still never forget the look on his face. He looks at me and he goes, either you're overdressed or I'm underdressed. And I said, you're underdressed. Get your tux on. And it was so cool. We had 2 little elderly couples that lived on either side of him, and they're both dead now. But the limo came, and she was out there taking pictures of us. It was like a prom night. I'd had 5 roses sent to Garfield's to set on our table. He bought me a ring. And we went there that night and ate dinner, and then the limo took us down Main Street. And it was awesome. 23 years later, I still remember that night.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. It was great.
And so those are the things that we've got to be purposeful about in making our time together special. Excitement, surprise, and fun are crucial for your marriage. And we'll talk a lot about that when it comes to sex. Such an important component. A professor of sociology we know says that the most common thing he hears when he is talking with couples whose marriages are in trouble is this: we don't have fun anymore. We used to have fun, but life has become boring and mundane. Our experience is that if we invest in marriage time together, it protects our marriage from becoming any of those dull, boring, and mundane. Otherwise, it just happens. It will just go that way. When marriage time becomes a regular weekly pattern in your life, it will kindle and rekindle the love you have for one another. It just happens. I mean, we can preach it all we want, but until you do it, it will prove to you that that's the truth. It's very simple, but it's powerful. You have to plan it, prioritize it, and protect